Now, okay, yeah. So I met up with Jacob yesterday, Jacob
Mhm.
Holiday in Light VFX, and that was really cool. Yeah, it was kind of like an impromptu thing. So he just popped over to London for the weekend, and we kind of kept up to date. He was like fitting in as many tours as he could, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here." I was like, "Okay, I'll meet you like outside the National Gallery, and then we'll just walk around for a bit." He said he wanted to grab a meat
Nice.
pie, so like strategically tried to find a place to do that. Yeah, it was cool. So yeah.
So, so in British parlance, meat pie, would that be like shepherd's pie?
No, no, no. So, what he was thinking of was more of like a steak pie or a steak and kidney pie, but we just got like a steak and tanglefoot pie, I think it was called. So,
Mm,
yeah, but so cottage pie and shepherd's pie are different things, and the name just means like beef or lamb. And that's
got
actually
it.
that's not really a pie. It's more like just mash and mince, like kind of together with gravy and like carrots and stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a bit confusing, but yeah,
I can't get into the sweetbread stuff. I can't eat kidney or like any organ meat. I don't know why.
yeah,
It just I mean, sad that, if we choose to eat animals, that part goes to waste as far as I'm concerned, but
yeah.
I don't know, I just can't get it. Um, I was watching this show called The Smallest Farm, or The Smallest Big Farm. Yeah, Biggest Little Farm, and there was this, like, lamb, and the lamb was acting like a puppy, and it was, like, following
Oh.
this kid around, and it was, like, playing with the kid, and, like, now I can't eat lamb even I can't eat lamb again after seeing that.
Yeah, they're really cute. I
Like,
remember.
horrible, like
Yeah,
go on?
no, go, no, no, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I mean, you know, I'm always, like, at odds with that, right? Because I respect the people who are vegetarian or necessarily, or vegan and don't wanna eat animals, and I totally respect that. I have no issue with that at all, right? For me, I like the taste of meat, but
Yeah,
as I go on and stuff, there's only, like, a certain, like, type of meat that I'll eat now. It's just gotten so weird, whereas, like, I become, like, socially conscious, but I still wanna eat meat, and I'm like, "What?" I can't give it up, right? So, like,
yeah,
okay, so, like, anything that's, like, overpopulated, I'll eat, right? Cows, I'm fine. I'll eat that, even though, like, there's, their carbon emissions and whatever, but
mm,
whatever, right? So, like, you kinda get socially conscious over time, right? And it's crazy because, like, seeing this stuff, you're like, "Mm, now what?" But then it's like, okay, so if society completely falls apart, right, you're gonna eat anything because 'cause you're starving, right? Or if you have a family and your kids are starving, like, well, sadly, there goes the cat, right? But
yeah,
hopefully we never get to that point, right? So that we can still and this is disingenuous because there are entire regions of the world that are starving, and I'm not putting that down. And I'm not certainly not downplaying that, but, for the societies that we live in, having that choice is kind of I gotta say it's a convenience, it's a nice thing.
mm,
That makes
yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah. That's true. I think I
But
heard
it
somewhere.
hit me yesterday. Yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
I think I heard somewhere recently. I don't know who said it. It was probably on a podcast somewhere that there's probably enough food in the world to feed everyone, but the rest of it's just like a distribution and logistics problem, like
Yeah,
which makes sense. Um,
that's what I'm hearing and reading,
yeah,
and,
like
if we could solve that problem and get food to the people who really need it, um, that's why I kinda wish I weren't, like, undiagnosed ADD and I could just focus on, like, things that really matter and solve problems in the world, but
yeah.
like,
Oh
pull me away
man.
from the pull me away from the work that I love doing, this animation stuff, man. I'm, like, trouble focusing on any of it. That's why I can't run my own company without a lot of help.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually, when we were walking around with when I was just gonna say when we were walking around with Jacob, but that doesn't make sense. When I was walking around with Jacob yesterday, we walked through Leicester Square and there was like some kind of protest thing going on, where it was four girls standing like in a square facing outwards, and they were like each holding a TV, and it was showing like some animal cruelty footage on it. I'm not even sure if that's
Oh,
legal
man.
because I don't know if that constitutes like a public disturbance or something. But like, we weren't sure what it was. So you have a
Different
quick
laws
look, and
there.
there's like some really disgusting stuff on there. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, animal cruelty.
Yeah, see here you can do that, and like a lot of that stuff is covered under First Amendment, but it's like at some point it turns into like the vulgar and the profane, and in some cases can be deemed as something pornographic. So there's a line, right? So
Yeah.
there's a line that you can't cross, and I think we're definitely pushing that in this country. So I don't know how that would fly. I don't know the laws in the UK how that works in London. Um, if there are laws against public disturbance where that would constitute that, but that's kind of gross.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of protests that happen in London,
Yeah,
but but yeah, it's just like some of the footage was really quite bad.
yeah,
And you think,
like
well, actually, they're doing it like right in the tourist center as well, so it's right near like the M&M and Lego place, and you're standing right near where all the kids are going to be walking by, showing that. I don't think you should be allowed to do that. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
I agree there. There's there's an etiquette, a social etiquette where I think it's great if you have the right to voice your message, whatever that message is. I mean, you know, in the United States, there's tons of stuff that I don't agree with, but I'll defend the right for it to be shouted from the rooftops. I don't agree with a lot of it, but I mean,
mm,
that's we kind of have that where the government can't come and arrest you for speaking out against it. That's kind of the crux of the First Amendment. But we push that and push that and push that. There is a gross um, factor where you don't want children seeing stuff like that. So you want to
yeah,
protect your kids from that stuff. But again, it goes against, in this country, you could say, well, that goes against our First Amendment right to be out there shouting why can't I show faces of death in, the town square? It's like, well, because yeah, you can, but it's it comes down to courtesy, common courtesy. When you're living in in a civilization and in a society, there's lines that you don't want to cross, and you got to think of other people. So it's just, yeah, it's
yeah,
weird. It's a weird thing, right?
yeah. I think, yeah, that's definitely true because it's like I think in a way sometimes it might constitute some kind of like indirect abuse or something. Because like for some of the footage, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it was like horses like having their necks kind of cut and stuff like that. And you're like, if a kid sees that and gets like traumatized, you've just like you know that should be illegal. I feel like that's a kind of like indirect abuse or something. Like it's just inflicting
No,
trauma like that. Um,
I
yeah,
I agree. And the weird thing is that on a debatable standpoint, you have the other side that would say, well, this is really happening, and we need to get that out there and educate people, and if you bring your kid out in public, it's a risk you take, and that's blah blah blah. And on the other
mm,
hand, it's like, do we want a society that traumatizes people? And then the people will go, oh well, your kid just needs to toughen up, snowflake. And it's like, no, like there are studies that show what this kind of thing can do. Like I'm a walking anecdotal case study of watching Alien when I was like 11 years old. Like
yeah,
I still have nightmares of this, some of those scenes in that film. So yeah, I mean, it traumatized me on a certain point, on a certain level. Granted, it's fiction, that's not real. Like at least I hope it's not somewhere in the universe. But
oh boy, it's a big
I,
universe. You
it's a
never
big
know.
universe, right? So it's an interesting topic. So I kind of take a back seat to that stuff. I don't jump
Yeah,
onto the Twitter debates and all that stuff. I kind of take a back seat from like a psychological and a sociological perspective, and just kind of watch it with curiosity and just see how the human race interacts with these issues that come up, and it's kind of fascinating. I mean, I don't know, it's a luxury to be able to take a step back from it.
yeah,
There are people that are knee deep in this stuff, yeah, and they have to deal with this stuff day in and day out. But it's an admitted luxury for me to be able to be fortunate enough to be able to step back from it and watch it from this sociological standpoint. So take
yeah,
that with whatever, but
yeah.
it's
True,
an
true.
interesting world we're living in right now.
Yeah, and you're talking about taking a step back and watching people. We spoke yesterday that London's a really, really good city for just people watching. Like
Mhm.
I've said this to friends before, right? Because I've got it might be like part of the attention deficit thing, but time either goes extremely slow or extremely fast. like
Yeah,
depending on what
right?
you're doing. Yeah, and I love people watching. I've gotten to places like an hour or 2 hours like early before we're meeting with friends, and I'll just like kind of chill back and sit there, and it will go by like really quickly, just like as you're just watching like all these different kinds of people come and go and do different things, and like dogs walking around and just all of that, and it's just like just like a time
Yeah,
lapse almost.
sure.
I love it. Yeah, it's like really interesting people watching, and I think the interesting word is Sonder, like the word from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. That's the word, which is like the realization that everyone that you see walking past you has a life as complex as your own, and like with their own hopes and dreams and troubles and stuff, and like they're worried about the like what they're going to achieve in life and when they're going to die and their family members, and are they going to get fired or get a raise and stuff like that. And it's like every single one of those people like is living their own complex life, and like if you just disappeared into the wall it would still like all happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
What was that word? Sonder?
Yeah,
That's
Sonder.
I swear I learn something new every day. I'm not even kidding. Like, that's just amazing. So that's a word that encompasses all of that.
Yeah, I think it's technically a made up word, but so many people use
Oh,
it that
yeah.
it's a good one.
Well, that's how it gets into Merriam-Webster. I mean, it's a use case thing, right? So the dictionary people will eventually probably add it if it's not in there already,
Yeah, I
if enough
actually
people use it.
I used that word back on like my entropy alternate reality game project in 2018. I needed a name for a starship, so I called it the Sonder. So that was
Oh,
a good one.
that is cool.
Oh man.
Did you ever keep up with that game? Is it still kicking around in the back of your head, or?
Well, like it finished, and the associated game update for like my old game on Steam, on Nations Minor, was finished. But like I was supposed to put everything together into a book and like
Oh,
just
nice.
collate everything that happened, but I never really got around to finishing that. So it's like kind of half finished somewhere. But
Yeah.
because YouTube picked up, and the kind of like weekly release cycle, and then all the products, and trying to make it full time, and just keep that running now, it's just the time management spinning plates hurdle, a story as old as time.
And that is, I mean, that really is, I think, something that us and probably most of our listeners in the Sonder,
Mm,
time management is a real, it's a skill that's not taught in most schools in Western countries, at least. I can't speak. I wish, Sharon were on here, but it's not taught.
yeah,
It's something you have to learn, and it's so incredibly important, and we just don't
it
know.
is.
We don't learn how to do it.
And the difficult thing is it's also different for like every individual, I guess, as well, because like
Yeah.
again, like attention differences, but also like interest differences, attention spans, how fastly people get frustrated and stuff like that. So time management can be like a really personal thing, I guess. Like people need to kind of figure out, and then if they're working in a team, make it compatible with other people as well. How do you manage that? So it's like it's quite a complex journey figuring out how to appropriately manage your time. I tend to do it based on a feeling a lot of the time, because like I don't really have
Mhm.
set times throughout the day. It tends to like
Yeah.
spike up in the morning, then go really low, and then spike up right before I go to bed again. I've heard that the same thing happens for like Ian Hubert. I think like in his like Blender conference talk, I think he said something. He gave it like a certain name, like the few hours between when he's supposed to go to bed and when he actually goes to bed. That's like when everything gets done. Like, um, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I have a feeling where I'm like, all right, enough. Like no matter what we're doing, we just stop, close every program, and just like play video games for the rest of the evening. Sometimes that
Yeah.
happens, because it's like you can feel like that little burnout sensation, and like as soon as you start feeling it, it's like, okay, it's not worth it. Just stop,
Yep.
get yourself re-inspired, enjoy something, and then come back like the next day. So yeah, I guess like trying to identify what that feeling is for people is another useful skill that requires some self-reflection.
Definitely does. I was, trying to solve a problem last night before I went to sleep, and I couldn't fall asleep until I just told myself I'll have to deal with it in the morning.
Yeah.
And, I just I end up sometimes just losing sleep lately because of it, and I think it's partially because I took on quite a bit of work. So, I have 3 clients right now, um,
Mm.
plus the YouTube stuff, and as the work came in, uh, the YouTube stuff picked up.
Oh
So I'm like,
right, yeah.
well, great. I'm like, okay, so I just hit like I think that spider video just hit like I don't know, it's floating somewhere over 400,000 views right now,
Ooh,
and I'm like, well, I want to get something on the follow up to that, and ride that momentum. But I have clients I'm serving, so I have to like,
yeah,
I mean, I have to pay attention to those who are paying me first, and then my own stuff. So I'm like, and then Patreon too is like takes precedence over the YouTube stuff because those people are paying. So I got to get them stuff, and
yeah,
there's only so many hours in the day, so the time management thing happens, and I think people like Ian Hubert seem to have it dialed in because the guy's like a machine. I mean, he just produces so much so quickly, that
yeah,
it's amazing. But you wonder, like, how much sleep does he actually get versus how much time does he have that's not taken up by other things. Like, everybody's life is different in the Sonder. Some people have families, other people don't. It's just some people have day jobs, others do it's there's so many factors and vectors that come into it, so it's not like a one size fits all approach, so everybody's gotta figure that out for themselves.
yeah. I like how you're picking up the word now, like you're slipping it
I
into
like it.
sentences. It's a good word. Yeah, it makes a lot of
I'm gonna
sense.
use it, and it's gonna get into the dictionary if it's not there yet.
Yeah, see, recruiting more people. Woo.
That's
um,
right.
yeah,
There's a there
go
was the
ahead.
Sanskrit word Maya, and in our community, Maya is a software program, right?
Yeah,
But in Sanskrit, it means being in the world, right? So it's part of like I'm probably not defining it exactly how it is, but it's like more like getting sucked into the material existence, and less on the ethereal.
right.
So when you're sucked
Interesting.
into the Maya, you're down in the world. You're sucked onto that, like, that base level of existence. So you kind of want to, in esoteric terms, you want to you want to be aware of the Maya, but you don't want to get sucked into it. Sucked down into the minutia of everyday life. You want to maintain your ethereal, your aspirations, your spiritual quality over the material. So I kind of adopted that for a while, but it's hard in this community because you say Maya and it's that
Yeah,
Autodesk software now. But but Sonder, I'm really digging that.
yeah. There's the other term as well I learned that I like, and I've been mentioning it in quite a few of my talking videos, which is the locus of control, and I think I've spoken about that on here as well. Like when
Yep.
I learned about that, that just like it made so much sense to me. Like trying to apply for jobs and nothing working out, like after coming out of school and like being told what to do all the time, it's like, okay, well, I developed an external locus, which means you believe that you're not in control of your life and that everything is decided for you and the universe is playing its game. And that's
Yep.
quite a dangerous thing to have. Well, actually, it's I think it's kind of dangerous to have an external or an internal to the extreme. Like you need to kind of like find a way to
Sure.
balance it. um
Hmm.
but when you believe that everything's decided for you, you're less inclined to try new things because you think, oh, well, it'll never work out for me because that's just the way it is. And the universe is never going to give me what I want and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I was speaking to my mum earlier about why I hated school and just how it never really clicked for me at all. Like, I used to stand at like the gates in primary school, kind of just like dreaming to get outside. I used to like walk up
Oh
and down
man,
the fields and not talk to people. And it was like, well,
I
I
did the same.
yeah, I was like, I think I would have been better homeschooled. I know there's the important point about like, having a social life and all that, but when I look back, like there was no part of like the school process where I felt grateful for like, the social interaction because I don't talk to any of my friends from school anymore. Like it's
Oh
just
wow.
for some people it just doesn't work out. And it's not like I'm bad at making friends or socializing. I've got lots of friends, but they're just like elsewhere, scattered around.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, like coming out of school, external locus of control because like I guess I just wasn't in the right environment to encourage that mentality. But what this job has given me now is my internal locus kind of growing back because it's like every choice I make now has a direct change, which is very obvious and like I can see the choices I make making a difference, even if it's something as stupid as like a certain view count or something monetary or someone reacts in a certain way. It's like, okay, well, now you've got some control. You're kind of learning how to think about the world in a more balanced way, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So
It's very true. The internal versus external locus of control is a psychological construct that really does it really does help frame certain issues. And you hit on a really good point. in that the external locus of control is, I mean, yeah, you're right. Anything to the extreme is really bad. But if you're going through life with an external locus of control, which by the way, most people actually have an external locus of control on this
Yeah.
planet. It's been studied. You can look it up. It's out there. But look for peer review. Don't look for just stuff on the internet. But the external locus of control is, we're kind of seeing it play out in society where people, you end up looking for a strong man. You end up looking for a leader that's, that's gonna, push ahead and make things okay and make things everything safe for you. And whereas the internal locus of control people are more like, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm
Mm.
not. I'm just saying that it's, if you have an internal locus of control, you're more self-driven. You see the world at that 30,000, 40,000, 60,000 foot level where you feel like you actually can make a difference. And you also realize too that there are things that are outside of your control, but it
Yeah.
doesn't rule you. You're like, okay, I can't deal with that. And you focus on the things that you can make a difference with, the things you can change. Because there's a whole lot in this world we can't change. We can't, you and I right now, we can't solve world hunger. We can't. We wish we could. We
Mm.
wish we could, just make all the bullets and every, all the gunpowder in the world just evaporate, and anyone who wants to fight has to do it with their fists, and yeah, I don't, all this stuff, right? You want peace,
Yeah.
we want stability, we want everyone to have a good life and be happy and stuff, but we can't control that. We can't control any of that.
This
What we can control is our reaction to it.
Yeah, this just reminded me of it might sound really stupid, but it is actually quite a poignant like philosophical concept. But Rick and Morty, right? They play with so many like strange and interesting ideas, but there's one specific episode where um Morty gets hold of this crystal, which I think if you look for it, oh no, I think he's got it like on his forehead somewhere, but like you can see where your future's heading, right? And
Yeah,
so he really wants to be with this girl called Jessica, I think it is. So every action he does is to make sure that he ends up with Jessica. So there's a part in it where like he's basically becoming like some kind of like demigod thing and just like destroying like entire like military groups and stuff like that, and he ends up getting like captured. Like he hands himself in because that's what the crystal says to do, and he's like being tried. And the point this I'm getting to here is when you said about like we can't solve world hunger, I always think like, is there like a certain word or a sentence you can put in a place, like any person can just say somewhere at the right place at the right time to like have a massive impact? Like, is there anyone we
butterfly
could
effect.
say, yeah, exactly, like that's exactly it, the butterfly effect could be like click to a certain tab, a certain website, a certain forum, the right person on Twitter at the right time. What specific combination of words could you say to actually do that? Like, is that possible? And there's a bit in that episode where he's he's being asked to like testify by the lawyer, and it's gonna like decide whether he gets like thrown in jail or something. And the crystal guides him to make like a specific, completely random series of like vocal notes, like not even words. And she's like, wow, just the strange combination of like of what you just said. I just feel like we need to let you go. And I'm like, oh man, like if there was a way
I,
just to
w-
figure out that.
I know. Just intonation. There's a whole. It was hard because I spent my 30s really studying deep esoteric stuff, um, Gnostics, all sorts of stuff,
Hmm.
Vedas, the Upanishads, a whole just deep level stuff, and and at the root of it all was certain vibrations, certain frequencies, right? Like things resonate, and it has a profound effect on the material existence. So, it was hard watching that stuff get so corrupted and co-opted in the last 10 years to serve nefarious purposes. But at the root of it all is really interesting. So I think, Dan Harmon probably got the idea in his writer's room from that. And, making a certain, intonation, certain, vibrations could set forth into
Yeah.
motion that would propagate into the universe to make these things happen. So it's a really interesting, non-scientifically proven. Well, some of it is scientifically proven. The resonant frequency is. But it's a really interesting topic that you could put that out there, and
Yeah.
the vibrations would
So
actually carry through to make it happen.
it's just it just kind of makes you think like aware artists like there's as you were saying there's so many variables, right? There's no way for us to interpret the world. We don't have like the equation of the universe in our minds necessarily consciously to be able to kind of
Yeah,
figure out just naturally what to actually do from our small bedrooms to like change the world. But like
I know.
it gets you thinking like as an artist. And there's so much, I mean, the art space is quite oversaturated. I mean, especially thinking about like the NFT stuff recently, that you put a piece of artwork out on Twitter, it disappears quite, quickly, like after a day or two, unless
Day or
it,
two, yeah.
yeah. So, but it makes you think, like, is there a specific series of like pixels that you could put together to like cause a certain change? And like, I guess in a way, a lot of us are kind of exploring that. Like,
Yeah.
kind of even with YouTube videos, it's like, is there a certain like video I can do? Is there a certain way I can edit it, or a certain thing I can make to like make the channel explode, or maybe do something different? Like, so I guess everyone's trying to find those combinations, but we,
They are, and you know what? I'm convinced those combinations don't really exist. I
yeah,
look at this, honestly, the stats of that spider video are there's, like, nothing really good about it. There's nothing outstanding about it. Like, when Dan told us Mr. Beast, says, "Just make one, aim to get 1% better," which is basically you really are just competing with yourself on YouTube.
yeah,
So you wanna make every video 1% better and in the statistics, right? In your metrics, but this video is not 1% better than any of my other videos. As a matter of fact, I think as it propagates to more people, the viewer retention is less and less and less. So I'm
yeah.
like, Mr. Beast is like, shoot for 70% viewer retention. I'm like, good luck. How do you do 70%? Like, how do you get that many people to watch 70% of your video? I mean, you have to be. I mean, there are people on Netflix that just start watching stuff and drop it, and they're paying for Netflix. Like, how do you even do that when there's so much other stuff that gets in the way? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they have it figured out with these video formulas that they do, where they can get people to watch 70% of their videos. I don't know. It's probably possible, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I've had videos, and when you were saying with your photogrammetry video that blew up to over 1,000,000, it's like your stats were decent at best.
Yeah, like much less than ideal. And that actually reminds me because recently Tom CG Matter did the anxiety app one. Did you actually watch that video? Uh,
I saw I mean, I keep seeing the thumbnail pop up, and I haven't actually watched it yet, which is really
okay.
interesting because I actually wrote an app like that about 15 years ago.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So that was a funny one. So he called us on the call, and he got us to like listen to the app, and like we say some funny things, which is in the video. But he specifically decided to try and edit that one in Mr. Beast style. And it is very good, like when you watch it, because like it doesn't give you time to stop and think. Like he keeps changing formats like all the time. Like he literally has a projector presenting like a PowerPoint presentation of what he's talking about on the screen, and then like a few seconds in, when it gets too consistent, he stops it and then like does a voiceover. Like he keeps like changing the presentation style, and like
Yeah,
he'll put subtitles in. But the thing is, the video ended quite quickly because it was quite short. It was only like 4 minutes, and I thought, oh, that's probably an easy way to cheat the retention system. If you make something so
yeah,
chaotic and end it before anyone like even remotely starts to get bored, then you've probably
mhm,
got high retention, which Mr. Beast doesn't really do because his videos are quite substantial anyway, aren't they? But
yeah,
but yeah, I think that's a way to cheat it. But like as you were saying about things not really mattering so much, or like there's no way to properly predict like what's actually going to happen. I think uh, we need to be careful not to get ourselves into the trap of thinking that it's all our fault. This is kind of
yeah,
like the anti-internal thing, because with
yep,
YouTube there are so many variables where it is kind of biased more in the external direction, which I think
mhm,
we've kind of been learning over time.
we have.
Um, so if your video is doing well now, when you put out the next one, all right, and then if your stats suddenly drop, you're going to feel really bad about it. But that might
Yep,
not be your fault because there might have been nothing you could have done about it. Like
yeah,
if you put out like the perfect next video that was exactly the same and then that failed, you would have felt exactly the same, maybe even worse if you spent more time on it. Like
exactly.
um So like when I put out my, I did a video a little while ago, and it was just me showing like the new studio space and talking about Blender
Yeah.
updates. And of course, that didn't do as well as other videos. It's more of a personal one. Like, I only expect existing subscribers to watch that. Um, but I did that, and it was the worst video performance of the year. I thought it would do bad. I didn't think it'd do that bad. But then like
Mhm.
the sub growth like plummeted for like weeks, and even when I was putting out new regular videos, like it was just stayed down. I was like, whoa, like don't ever talk about yourself ever again because your channel is gonna die.
Yeah.
So it took ages to get that to start to grow back up. And now I put out like a regular tutorial recently, which is about like doing like glowy text stuff. I wanted to just to see whether I could do regular tutorials still.
Yeah.
That
That's on my
is
watch
now
later list too. Yeah.
okay. That is now the worst performing video of the year. So
Is it
that
really?
yeah, that's worse than me talking about myself. And I was
Wow.
really surprised by that because I was like, this is like a ducky kind of styled, like regular kind of beginner entrance motion graphicsy type thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. But even though that's performed worse than the this is my studio space video, the sub growth hasn't been affected. So I was like,
Oh
okay,
wow.
that's weird. I thought that the sub growth was just because it was a bad performing video.
Hmm.
Maybe it's because new people see that and they have no reason to subscribe, whereas they do for the text one, but I'm not sure. But the point is, you're not aware of all the variables. So when you
Yeah.
feel bad when something does bad, it, you you kind of shouldn't, because you don't know that that was actually entirely your fault, or whether there are some other aspects at play. So yeah, I guess that's just the point. Like when something does go wrong, because it inevitably will. Like you can't go up forever.
No.
You're going to end up having a little dip, or you're going to go down again and keep coming back up. Like that's just
The roller
natural.
coaster.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to learn not to feel too bad about it. Because I did feel really bad about this one. I was like, I'm a tutorial channel. I was supposed to be able to do tutorials, and it's the worst performing one. I was like, oh
Yeah.
damn it! Now I've got to like. I was overcompensating. I recorded 2 new videos on the same day about like interesting things I did, and I was like, no, like just stop. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think I'm going to put those up now. I think they were pretty good, but I was like, no, no, no. I know they were rushed, so I'm not going to do that. I was like, you got to just take a step back. You've got like products and projects and stuff. Just chill and make them. So I started working on a project I really want to do called Afterglow. So I've been doing like lots of lighting experiments, and I'm really liking them, and like Twitter likes them, and I'm like, okay, see, when you just stop, don't like overreact to the bad feeling. Just do something you feel like doing. Then you're probably
Yep.
going to end up coming out with high quality stuff anyway. So yeah, it's all just like a constant learning process. I don't think you can like entirely get over the bad feeling. Like there's always going to be something there.
You can't. I mean, it's been a roller coaster. I had the same thing happen. I was on a roll for a while, and then I did like a sea urchin video and it crashed. Nobody watched it,
Mm.
even though I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, I don't know, I liked it.
Yeah.
But after that, then I did like I was like I got into food, so I was making dessert like Twinkies and cupcakes, and nobody wanted to watch that. So that was kind of bombed. And then it was, like, up for a while, and then I made, like, what was that? Field, the crop circles,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
that one completely bombed. Nobody wanted to watch that. I mean, I can't say nobody. There was still, I mean, it's still a few thousand views, so a few thousand people were still interested in it. I got some good comments on it, so it's not like it was useless. I helped people, so
Yeah.
my metric is like, am I actually affecting positive change in people's lives? And if they get something out of my video and it helps them, then I have helped somebody else out there. So that mission accomplished there, right? I helped somebody. But as far as like my YouTube growth, yeah, I killed it. I was like, what? What? Oh my god, I should give this up because I suck. And
Yeah.
and then I did that. I think it was like that the underwater video, which did okay, and then I think it was the Harry Potter, cloud, the Dark Mark one, which actually started lifting my channel back up, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. So that's kinda cool." And then that one from Kowloon City, the one I did with the geometry no I wasn't gonna touch GeoNodes because they keep screwing with it, and I just my
Mm.
fear is, like, they're gonna screw with it again, and they're gonna go back to attributes and whatever. And I'm gonna get a bunch of hate comments saying it doesn't work anymore. So I stayed away. But then I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna jump in and I did that one, and that one took off. And like the next few took off with it. I'm like, okay, cool. I enjoy doing these videos and I like it. So we'll see how long this one lasts.
Yeah.
This run, because I know it's gonna crash. At some point I'm gonna do like another crop circle video and it's gonna get like 800 views in 2 days. And
That's the
well,
thing. Sometimes, like, you think you're on a roll and you know exactly what people want, and like you just make another one that you perfectly expect people want, and just like no one watches it, and you're like, what do you people want from me?
and what do you
uh,
and that's where I think the algorithm just, it's like if you don't hit the certain metrics in a certain amount of time, it won't push your video and nobody will see it.
yeah.
So you'll get like that small percentage of the people who got notifications, and if those notification people don't click, YouTube's like, well, they're the most engaged and they're not interested in this video. So what else can we show?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure YouTube knows what they're doing, or at least they think
They
they know
do.
what they're doing, but like, I think they need to give us a bit more like freedom, with experimenting with new things. Maybe don't rely so heavily on the pre-existing subscribers, because I don't know, like we're supposed to be like growing the channel, we're supposed to be reaching new people and, you know, trying to get people interested in new things. If people are just watching exactly the same thing over and over again, they're not learning about new things they might like, therefore the pool of things which they could watch is less. Like I would imagine they're trying to encourage, actually they are kind of keying into that, because I think they're trying to add a section new to you, I think it's called,
Cool.
but they haven't really been pushing that much. So I don't know if it's actually still there. But there's supposed to be a place where people can watch stuff which isn't usually in their recommendation cycle. So I hope that they keep up with that, because
Too.
yeah, I think it's a really good idea for them to keep encouraging people to discover new content, because clearly that's going to be the best way to keep people in YouTube for the long term, because it's going to be
Yep.
like, it's going to keep enriching them rather than watching like the 50th episode of, X, Y, or Z creator only,
Yep.
which they'll eventually get bored of, because they're like, as they grow up, their interests change. They might do other stuff, and they think, oh, YouTube is just these guys, and like,
Yeah.
and do other stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I just think that if I was in charge, I mean, yeah, I'm sure I'm biased, like when our videos don't work out, but like if I was in charge, I'd do it differently.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
think you got to break people out of these echo chambers that we all fall into the echo chambers. And it's kind of a dangerous place to be because it reinforces certain things and you stop getting exposed to new ideas and it reinforces it's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
So you fall into this confirmation bias trap, and it happens with everything, and that's how you get the fanboys. That's how you get the people who, like I get comments like, the second you switched out of Blender, I turned off the video. Okay, okay, I stopped watching. Well, great, but you missed all this other cool stuff that I did in this other app that you might have been interested in, because you have this bias against everything that's not open source or whatever your bias is. I don't know, but it's like, I grow because I watch other software. I've done it for years. I've always looked at if like if I was using Maya for 10 years straight. I had 3D Studio Max installed too, and I would use that for certain things too. I knew Max, but
Yeah.
like the stuff that was being done in like Cinema 4D, I'd never touched Cinema 4D. But I would watch those videos, or I would watch they weren't videos at the time. I was watching, I was reading like text um
Yeah, like
tutorials
the old tutorial styles. Yeah.
just to pick up, wow, okay, so that's something that's available in that app. Can I do that in my app? Can I do that on my platform? And you grow that way. Locking yourself just into the tools that those developers decide to give us in Blender really limits you. You're
Yeah,
not going to
that's true.
grow. You're going to hit a limit. It's going to happen. You can push that limit, but you're going to hit it
Yeah,
because
one
you
thing
need the
that,
diversity of thought.
have you thought about like doing like, product, I mean, have you had any ideas for tools you might want to add to Blender, like for your own workflow and stuff? Just talking about that
Um,
point, like,
that's a really good question, Curtis. I personally, I don't, because I'm spoiled.
Hmm,
I am
that's
completely
true.
spoiled with Houdini. And if there's something that I can't do in Blender, I'll jump into Houdini and do it.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
point.
and I stick to Blender now, A, because I like it. I like the community. I think it's a great, it's growing, and I support it. But as far as production software, like, I know that I can just handle anything. Houdini, I can do anything in, anything.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
to build now the business side is like, wow, I could like build these tools for Blender that, that do what, Houdini does. But then you're up against always up against that wall where they just Blender doesn't handle massive amounts of geometry. So all the cool stuff that I'd want to do, it would crash the viewport. It wouldn't work. I'm on a Threadripper 3970, and I just got a new graphics card, an A4000 RTX,
Right.
and because I can't find a 3090 anywhere. Plus, I like the blower. The blower style blows a lot of air, a lot of hot air out of my cabinet, so out of my
Right.
case. It's a good thing, and I can like it's so slim that I can stack like two or three of these and have a really powerful machine. And it's like 16 gig of VRAM, but that's beside the point. Um, I will try to do something like I was trying to do a simulation in Blender, and it just it froze. And I'm on a really powerful machine. I mean, this is one of the top of the line machines now, and I couldn't get it done. And I went into Houdini, and it was like a breeze. I went into Clarice on stuff that chokes Houdini.
Oh
So,
yeah.
so for me, I hit these limitations, and I don't have real ideas. And honestly, a lot of good production stuff is already implemented. There's Box Cutter, which is really cool. There's Scatter, which is cool. So
Yeah, that's
that
true.
that question your question would make me really have to think really, really, really hard.
One thing that I found is that obviously because I do a lot of product and development stuff is um, a lot of it is with like the kind of monetary aspect in mind, but it's not just that. It's like I always want to do better, and I'm always building to make it easier for myself to make art and more complex projects in the future, even if I don't do that, if that makes sense. So it's like
Yeah.
I'm building packages so that if I wanted to sit down and make art, I could do it like that so easy. I could pump out like 1,000 awesome looking artworks that would
I
take other
like
people like months to do. I can just do it in like days, and like
Yeah,
so
your
I
generative stuff's dialed in, yeah.
and it's yeah it's that, and it's also not just that as well, because like I'll think to myself when I'm making like the modular metals pack or like or the procedural patterns or doing anything, like if I sculpted like a model or a piece of artwork, I know that I will have to put in absolutely no effort into making it look nice afterwards, because like it's just so easy to do. I can just drag it into one of my files, just drag something onto it, and it's done. Like it looks fantastic. So it's like, okay, so you're knocking off parts of the workflow. Like so I get, yeah. So for the generative stuff, it'll be like, okay, if I'm doing something sci-fi, I can use Biogen for ideation. Then I can kind of sculpt it into something that actually looks cool, and then I can just
Yeah.
drag it into something like that and make it look amazing. So it's like you're kind of knocking off these things. So as I'm making packages, it's like how can we speed up and kind of make things more versatile and varied, as fast as possible. So I kind of wonder if maybe in the future you might be able to kind of do something similar in your own way, like because there might be some money making potential there as well. If you're working on things which help improve your work, it might even just be templates. It might not have to be tools, but like collections of templates or assets or something, not necessarily repetitive, but something that just helps you a little way in your workflow that you can just bundle together in a little package, which in your mind is, hey, this is something I can use for myself, but maybe if I just put like a small price tag on it, someone else might be able to use it as well. And then, so that's kind of how I think about the products. It's not just a money making potential, though that is part of it. It's like always working towards this kind of fictional ideal of, if I did want to like sit down and make art all the time, then this is going to help me. I guess it's a bit like what we were talking about earlier, like the perfect tones and vibrations. We're always trying to like work towards something we don't know if it's actually possible. I guess like making those products and stuff, it's like I'm trying to find like the perfect speed for my workflow, or like I'm trying to become or invent the perfect artist that doesn't exist, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
no, I get it.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a really good stream of thought, man. That's got me thinking. Now I'm gonna have to I'll have to come up with a list.
That's what this podcast is for. Woo.
Oh, I know. I really it's a good challenge because there's quite a bit. And I do use Blender in the freelance. Uh and I'm probably and I use it for certain, definitely one client in particular, because a lot of other people on the team use Blender. And I'm not working with them, but we share assets, and I have to kind of keep it local to that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's just knowing the right tool for the right job, and just have it. So for me, it's like I just have a breadth of tools that have depth as well, and some have more depth than others that I know I can just draw into when I need them. So I don't need to necessarily. I haven't been in the mindset of I needed to invent a better hammer,
Yeah.
because I have like three of them. But yeah, there are places, there are gaps, and I need to be mindful of those gaps. And there are certain things that definitely take way too long to do right now that could be sped up.
I
And
wonder.
then figuring out how other people would use it too is the
Yeah.
trick.
Even for like your Houdini work and stuff, you know,
Mhm.
like are there things that you find yourself repeating, even in terms of like making certain node combinations to get like certain effects?
Oh,
Because
absolutely, yeah. I've consolidated most of those into my own DAs.
right,
DA, digital asset. That's Houdini's uh vocabulary is the DA structure is the digital asset.
yeah,
So we call it the DA.
okay,
So
interesting.
you can package them up. So you can take like any group of nodes, kind of like it's like grouping in Houdini. So if you group geometry nodes into a group, or you group material nodes into a group, and then you package that up,
They're like
Houdini
digital
takes it a step
assets.
further, where you can actually create an actual SOP level, surface operator level tool for it. And then you
Right.
can
Okay.
install it in Houdini, and then when you hit tab, it shows up. You name it, you hit tab, it shows up just like an operator would, or just like a node would inside of Blender.
Okay.
So you
Interesting.
could have a whole tree, and then you can like itemize it. So you can have a label, and you could say, okay, well, these are all in, Kev's tools, and there are like all of my DAs right there. So you hit tab, you go to Kev's tools, and then they're all there, and you can just like drop them onto your node graph and hook them up, and they work.
So, like, I know that Houdini has a certain commercial license at like a
Mhm.
certain tier. Um, like, do they allow you to sell those digital assets? And if they do, can you only do that if you have like the commercial like allowance? I suppose. Um,
Yeah, yeah, we didn't we yeah, this is a thread we were discussing. I don't I don't know. I would say that the educational I don't know if you can save out DAs from the from the apprentice version. I think you can, but it's they have these different formats for the files. So there's the scene format for Houdini is .hip.
yeah.
And for apprentice version, it's .hipnc for non-commercial, and then
Okay.
for the indie version is .hiplc for limited commercial. So I don't know how that carries through to the DA systems, but I know that if you have indie, you can sell them because you have a commercial license, and indie is only like $269 a year. Yeah, it's
Right.
for
Okay.
Blender people, it's like they scoff. Why would I pay for software? So, well, I don't know, but Houdini is, for the price, as long as you don't go over $100,000 a year, it's $269 a year. You're basically renting the software for a year. If you pay for 2 years in advance, you can get it cheaper than 269. But once you pay that, as long as your business that's you're using Houdini for doesn't go over 100,000, then you're only you're still on indie and you can sell whatever you want. So that gives you the
Okay.
commercial rights to sell stuff. I don't know about the Apprentice free version.
All right, that's interesting
Does that
then.
answer does that answer your question at all, or does that confuse you more?
No, no, no. It does answer it some way. I also, I guess the market for kind of digital assets would also be smaller, I guess, than the Blender community because like there is a price tag to Houdini licenses and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a Houdini is a much smaller it's a much smaller community. Blender right now is in the millions because you have
yeah,
all of these people who are home. They might have just wanted to dabble in animation, or they were graphic artists, 2D people who wanted to get into 3D, and they downloaded Blender. I was just speaking to a friend of mine who works at he was working he was working with Dan Harmon, um, not on not on Rick and Morty, but another show. And he had actually he was one of the guys on Metalocalypse too. He I think he like animated Murderface. But he was saying that, 'cause I was talking to him about Blender, and he was saying, yeah, people are using it in the industry. Like you don't even realize how many people are using it for storyboarding and things like that. It's like
mm,
it's pretty used. And so you have, because it's free, everyone can download it and you can build tools for it. And the people who really start going, serious hobby will buy stuff. Houdini's a Houdini's a much smaller group. It's a heavily focused professional group of people who, they're a lot of veterans. It's kind of like, when you're 17 and you get your driver's license, unless you're super wealthy, your parents or you don't buy a Bugatti,
yeah,
right? You buy like an 18-year-old Camry and you beat the crap out of it while you're learning to drive, right? And it's a great car and it'll get you places, and you can certainly, learn on it and use it. That's Blender. It's a solid application. It's great. You can do so much with it. You can learn so much about 3D just by going into Blender. And if you choose to later on, you can get yourself a Bugatti if you have the money and the means, or a McLaren, or a Ghost, right? But or you can be like, you can build a factory to make Bugattis or Camrys or whatever, and Houdini's that factory, right? When you get into Houdini, you're not just buying a Bugatti, you're buying the factory that can build the Bugatti or anything else.
yeah,
So it's more like, I'll say this: the learning curve is incredibly steep. It's not as easy as Blender, because it's a language. Not that that should be off-putting to anyone. You can certainly pick up Houdini. A lot of the Blender people, especially the vector people, can pick up Houdini. The
yeah,
people who dabble in the vector nodes, that stuff, no problem. You can get into Houdini. For regular artists who are used to the destructive workflow of just going in and modeling something, Houdini is another language. It's totally alien. It took me a long time to make the transition. So it's a much smaller group, but I'll say this: when Autodesk bought XSI a number of years ago and they killed it, they pissed off a lot of people who will never buy an Autodesk product again or
yeah,
support Autodesk in any way. They jumped into Houdini because at the time XSI had this thing called ICE, Interactive Creation Environment, and it was node based, procedural, similar to what Houdini is. So they were able to just go, all right, screw that. We're just going to go and keep pushing, and we'll go into Houdini. So Side Effects picked up a number of users. I know like studios in Manhattan that were just, they were XSI centric, and all of a sudden their entire pipeline is getting killed because of mergers and acquisitions. Like screw it, they went to Side Effects. So I'm starting to see more motion graphics people go into Houdini, but it's a slow burn because it's a really tough program. I mean, I keep seeing people like every year, these people tweet the same thing. This is the year I'm going to learn Houdini, and then like 6 months later, they're still in
yeah,
Cinema 4D. So is there a market for it? Yeah, there is. Like anything, if you find the niche, if you find your audience, they're there. And if your stuff's really good and it's stuff that they're not, because most people who learn Houdini, they're like techie, they're dabblers, they want to build their own tools. Um, but as that grows, there are probably going to be more people that that just want to be artists. They don't want to be technical. They don't want to do the programming. They don't want to learn Vex. They don't want to jump into VOPs. They don't want to do all that stuff. So there probably will be a market there. I don't know how big it'll ever be because of the speed of Blender development. You can, if you're a hobbyist and you just want to put stuff up on Instagram,
Oh yeah,
Blender's awesome.
yeah, that's
You
true.
don't need anything else unless you want to push it. Unless you want to like throw trillions of polygons into a scene. Um,
Yeah,
you can do it in Blender.
it
So
seems like
it's a good question, and I don't have a good answer because there's all the vectors. There's so many vectors.
yeah, I guess it's like a continuous question, isn't it? Like it's gonna like keep evolving, and like the answer will keep evolving and changing over time. Even me,
Yeah.
like the requirements will keep changing. But one thing I find like interesting is coming up with all these packs and tools and stuff. Blender for me feels like my Blender feels so different to the default Blender. Like, and I feel like that's kind of the beauty of it. Maybe it makes it
Yeah.
kind of inaccessible for like other people watching, but I think they also find it really interesting and exciting. Like when they see, oh, here's his custom file with his custom theme, with his custom packs and his custom tools, and look what kind of weird stuff it's making. I guess there's also like a compulsion to see how far Blender can be pushed, and like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of interesting being like always on the boundary, like because when I'm putting stuff out on Twitter, usually it's like the kind of exciting stuff that people don't really realize you can do with it, but it always feels like there's something new to try. But it
Sure.
on the flip side of that, I feels like a lot of Blender's limitations are low level, which is like when talking about Clarice, being able to manage so many things at once. There are
Yeah.
smart ways to do it, but Blender's not really exploring them. you
I
know
know.
but I feel
They're
like
not.
maybe in the kind of Houdini department, I mean I was going to say generative modeling, geonodes is kind of a sign of moving in the direction, but it's not the same. um but but that does have low level support, and there are things like the kind of virtualized presentation of geometry. I don't know what the accurate name for it is, but point cloud systems being able to render so many like perfect spheres and stuff. That's technically not geometry, but the fact that they're integrating that, which is quite a low level thing in Blender, kind of gives me hope that they're working more towards that department of being able to like present effects with low level support, which would make it easier to render so many things on the screen and control it with node based systems. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that Blender's starting to move in a more Houdini-ish direction, but we'll see. They need to
It
keep up
definitely
with the
seems like
logic.
they're taking cues from Houdini.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think Houdini is probably the best. And I get a lot of, I'll get a lot of fire for saying that, but it really is. I don't know. I'm not going to say the best because it's not as easy to use as some other things. So the best is a relative term because the best is what's best for you in your workflow. That's the definition of best.
Yeah.
I will say Houdini is probably the most extensible, where you can go in and you can. I mean, it's that Walt Disney quote: "If you can dream it, you can do it."
Yeah.
Like in Houdini, it's so true because you have access to every level of everything anytime you want it. So you can access point data on anything, and points can have attributes. So each point can have as many attributes as you want to give it. And then you can use those attributes to control the behavior of those points. So when those points, get a vertex on top of it and then connect to other points to create polygons or other vertices to create polygons, and they can connect in ways that you can't even like. I mean, you could always just change the connection of these things. So you can make them do anything you want. Like vellum in Houdini it's just points. It's just particles, but it's the way that they're connected to each other and the physics that drive it that creates that system. Same with
Yeah.
particles, same with pyro, it's the same thing. Fluids, same thing. Right? It's points. It's point data and you have access to each one of those. You can have vectors on the points. You can give points normals in Houdini. Right? You
Yeah.
think like a point. Why does a point need normal? Well, you can derive velocity from that normal. You can derive, you can take the vector and get velocity from it. You can do so many things that no other program gives you access to. Even Maya, as like awesome as Maya is, I used it for a decade solid. I was 10 hours a day in Maya. I put my 10,000 hours into Maya. It's a great program, but it doesn't give you that. When you go into Houdini and you realize, wow, I can get access to this. All of a sudden your world opens up. You're like, I can do like there becomes like 100 different ways to do any problem solving you want. Any problem you have, you can tackle like 5 different ways at least and get access to the very core of the data that you're looking for. And you can access it and you could pull it from it and then you can manipulate it and throw it back on it. Um, so Antagma has a really good in those rant videos that they do. The guys from Antagma, the ENTAGMA Antagma, they're really brilliant, and they put it because they're Houdini guys, and they picked up Blender and they're starting to do geometry node stuff. And their geometry node stuff is like light years beyond most people because these guys are like they've been using procedural systems forever,
Yeah,
and
they're keyed into it.
they're really good. And but they say the same thing. They're like Blender's like baby Houdini, but it's like it's a mix of SOPs and VOPs, which are surface operators and vector operators. So in Houdini, if you want to do the vector in Blender, if you want to do the vector operator stuff, you can do it in material nodes. You can do it in cycles, and then you can push and pull like we see in 3 December every year or 3 December or 3 November. What is it? The 1 month where everybody like showcases and
No, no,
showboats.
yeah, November. Yeah.
November, thank you, November, right? So they do November every year, and people are doing all this crazy stuff inside of the material editor, the shader editor, right? Well, Houdini has the part which is called VOPs, which is a vector operators, where you can do all that stuff and more.
All
Lots of
right.
different types of noises, lots of different types. You can really get really, really, really deep point level stuff. And then you can take that into surface operators and do even more stuff with it. And then you can pipe that into solvers, which will iterate particles on it, which you can grow stuff with. You can do iterative growth. You can do, you can take sand and blow sand and have that sand like solidify and turn into liquid, and then like hit a wall and have it be lava and smoke. And I mean, it's just insane.
Very cool.
And
Um,
it handles.
there are quite a few points I want to talk about, but
Sure.
I will need to close this up because I just got a message from downstairs saying that they want to lock up the house
Oh
because
no.
it's 9:30 now. I'm half an hour past my shower time.
Sorry about that. I
No, it's
ramble.
all right. No, it was a good conversation. I liked it. I wanted to talk about more stuff about. I was helping Erin recently with Python about attributes. I was going to talk about how like attributes aren't real. They don't really make sense because it's just like data types, and how I was trying to talk to him to help me understand how they're actually written in Blender.
Yeah,
Like, because it's all
he's
just like
brilliant.
everything just boils down to the same stuff, like basic data types. But the rest of it's just like how the specific software wraps that data together. And I didn't really
Yep.
understand how Blender did it. Like I use geonodes and I've used attributes a bit, but like actually making them in Python and kind of writing it in the right way just for geonodes to kind of understand it and stuff like that. So yeah, but I feel like once you understand all those different levels, then the softwares kind of look the similar. It's just like it's just one's more restrictive than the other. Like one has fewer features, or one's not using like an algorithm that's as optimized to handle as many things and stuff like that. But yeah, I will need to go now. So
Yeah, it is very true. The the way that it's structured, the way that it's written at its core makes all the difference in the world, which is why I
Hmm,
think that Blender is going to need, and I'll wrap it up, but I think that Blender is looking at the way it's structured, it's going to need a rewrite if it wants to do everything that Houdini can,
yeah,
just by the roadblocks that exist in the code.
no, I think it will.
But I'm not a computer science guy, so the developers know way more. You would know way more because you're way deeper in Python than I am. You deal with that stuff. You deal with the API. Um, I'm not right now, but looking at the structure and the way it's built and knowing how Houdini's built, they're fundamentally different.
You know, I will close up, but just on that point, I think it's interesting that the last, 3.1 was like almost entirely focused around like performance optimizations, which is a good sign because it shows that they're like aware like of the low level improvements that can be made. And also on the API front, the interesting thing about Blender, and this is why I made Easy BPY, most like software APIs are written to like an English human readable standard. Like so like Unity, for example, you use functions like get component or like do this, do that, whatever. Blender's not like that. Like we're still running through like all these like data paths to access stuff. bpy.ops.mesh.this. Whatever. It's missing an extra layer, which is what Easy BPY is supposed to be. Even though it's limited, I need to do a lot more work on it. Which is just like, you know, create material, get material, like add material, do this. Like that's the English human readable layer that's missing. But I guess it's because they haven't really invested time in that. But also, I think that's probably a good sign because it means that their focus is generally lower level in Blender. They haven't really focused too much on superfluous, you know, extra usability stuff, which I guess is good. So, like, I think they're looking in the right direction for what we want.
I think they are.
So yeah. But anyway, I'm going to close it up. So it was nice chatting to you, Kev. And
Likewise, man.
yeah.
Sorry I wasn't on video. I'm
That's all right.
working these jobs on the background.
yeah, no worries, no worries. I missed that castle background.
Yeah, it's still here. I had it a few weeks ago. It'll come back.
Yeah, all right. So I'll speak to you sometime soon. All right.
All right, Curtis. Take care.